Hello and welcome back to another episode of Getaway Day. As always, I am Mason, but not as always. With me is Thomas. You guys probably hear me refer to him as T-Rad a lot. He is the editor for the podcast. He is stepping in for Gautam today, who has some prior engagements. So we are here to talk about the American League East, which I feel Thomas is especially qualified to talk about. So, Thomas, how are you doing today? Can you reintroduce yourself for anyone who hasn't heard you since last year's American League East Division preview?
I actually think it was 2 years ago. I want to say it was 2 years ago's AL East preview. But for those that are new, my name is Thomas, aka T-Rad, and I'm a diehard Jays fan, so that's why I'm specifically qualified to talk about the AL East today. But overall, I just do a lot of the editing for anything you see on YouTube, especially the cards videos and the podcast videos that go up each and every Monday and Thursday. So
yeah,
great to be back on here.
So that significant increase in quality over the last couple months, he's the one to thank. It's definitely not me. So, okay. So what do you say we get right into it? We're going to do this in kind of the same style we just did the National League West preview here last week. So if you guys haven't caught any of the other division previews, go check those out on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you find Getaway Day. Go check those out. Today we are talking specifically about the American League East, which was won last year by the Baltimore Orioles with a 101-61 record. They came out of nowhere. Nobody really expected them to be that good, seeing as really the only good pieces they had were Adley Rutschman. They were probably going to be getting Gunnar Henderson at some point, but Cedric Mullins, he was kind of the only other guy. They kind of killed it. They ended up bringing up a whole bunch of really young guys. Jordan Westberg made the team at one point. Gunnar Henderson made the team at one point. They had Grayson Rodriguez came up and struggled at the beginning of the year, but they had a huge impact from guys in the rotation that nobody expected to really be that good. Guys like Dean Kremer, guys like Kyle Gibson last year ate a lot of innings for them. So it was a team that seemed to overperform. But this year, they went out and they made some pretty substantial upgrades to this team, bringing in none other than Corbin Burnes to be the front of their rotation, along with a growing and improving Grayson Rodriguez. I'm very, very thrilled with this team. They still have a ton of prospects coming up, like Jackson Holliday. But T-Rad, what are your thoughts on the Orioles?
A guy that you've kind of kept overlooking so far is actually Kyle Bradish. Kyle Bradish was phenomenal this past season, and I mean, it's going to be interesting with the Orioles this year, especially because they're not going to have their closer, Felix Bautista, who is just filthy. Like, Mason, I don't know how often you faced him in MLB The Show. He's hard to hit in MLB The Show on rookie. I can't imagine actually stepping in the box against that guy.
Yeah, but they do still have Yennier Cano, who is also really freaking good in that pen.
I'm really looking forward to seeing how Corbin Burnes does perform in the AL East. It's a completely different animal than the NL Central, which he's been used to playing in Milwaukee. A lot more hitter-friendly ballparks as well. When you're looking at Yankee Stadium, Rogers Center, even though last year the renovations seemed to nerf a lot of the offensive numbers, it is still a very hitter-friendly division in general. But Rogers Center, really excited to see how those renovations look as well this year. But a guy like Corbin Burnes, I loved that acquisition. When that broke, I was like, okay, yeah, they're going for it. And at the time of recording, the now ex-owner of the Baltimore Orioles, Peter Angelos, just passed away as well. So that team is now completely taken over by the new ownership group. And they're going to have money to spend. And that team looks scary, not even just for 2024, but in the years to come.
Yeah, so one point I want to come back to for a minute, like, yeah, there's some hitter-friendly ballparks in the American League East, but I think you're underselling some of the ballparks in the National League Central that he's had to pitch in. Milwaukee itself is a major hitter-friendly park. Great American Ballpark out there in Cincinnati. Those are places where people just tee off. And Corbin Burns has not struggled there at all. Like, he's so dominant. That cutter is probably the best cutter ever. Like, if you look at individual guys that have the best version of whatever pitch, Bob Gibson has the slider, Corbin Burns has the cutter. Like, shoot, who's got the nasty curveball? There's a ton.
The first person that came to my head was the late Roy Halladay, but
Yeah, that's a good one. But Corbin Burns, like, his home run numbers have been fairly decent. The last 2 years he's consistent, I think, is the big thing. About 1 home run per every 9 innings. So not terrible there. He was down actually below 0.5 the couple years before that. So homers have never been a big issue for him. I don't think that the smaller parks here are going to be that big of a factor. It'll be interesting to see how these teams are able, or how how the Orioles are able to build around him, because Bradish is on the IL to start the year.
Yeah. And then John Means, who really has just had an issue staying healthy his last few years, really.
Yeah, he had Tommy John, and then he came back, wasn't really effective, had some issues staying healthy there. He's now, actually, as of the end of last year, he was out with elbow soreness after Tommy John, and he hasn't pitched yet that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I don't think he has either. I mean, I'm looking at this bullpen right now. I'm surprised that Fangraphs itself has Cano as the setup guy to Craig Kimbrell. If that was me, I'm actually putting that the other way around.
I understand why they're doing that. Kimbrell, it seems like if you leave him in the closer role, he still plays or pitches pretty well. But as soon as you move him, it seems like there's something with his confidence that he can't pitch to the same level. So I kind of get it. And leaving Yenyer in the same spot that he was last year gives him some consistency. So it makes sense. It makes sense to me, at least.
Like, I get it at the same time, too, because, I mean, Kimbrell's a veteran. He's been doing this for ever. But, I mean, Cano is just absolutely disgusting, too. Actually, I just looked. Cano has options. I forgot he had options.
Yeah.
So if he struggles at all, they can just send him down, rebuild his confidence down in AAA.
So what we haven't talked about yet with the Orioles is actually their lineup, because their lineup is what got them through last year. Guys like Cedric Mullins leading off, speed, defense, contact, with some power in there too. Steady Mullins broke out 2 years ago, and he's been just as good since. As soon as he stopped switch hitting is kind of when everything went right for him. Then you got Adley. Then you got Gunnar, who was he Rookie of the Year?
I believe so. I believe it was unanimous too.
Yeah, so last year's Rookie of the year before that's Rookie of the Year. Then you got Santander, who's their big power bat. And then is where things go more towards the kind of major league average or slightly above average guys, but still quality players in Ryan O'Hearn, Mountcastle, Austin Hayes. And then you've got the young second baseman Jordan Westberg down there as well, who's got some really high ceiling there. Jackson Holiday will probably be up at some point this year. Kobe Mayo might be up. Heston Kjerstad, Colton Cowser. Like, this team just does not lack for young talent. If you build around those top 4 guys in the lineup with these young players and whoever's hot at the time, they're going to be just fine.
A team that this really reminds me of is the mid-2010s Houston Astros. When you bring up the core of like George Springer, Carlos Correa,
Alex
guys
Bregman.
that were built, Alex Bregman, Jose Altuve, guys that were built through the system and then had success together as a group. I mean, like, you saw it last year. Every piece just kind of came together. A guy like Adley Rutschman, who has really transformed this franchise since he got called up. like when he got called up, I believe that was in 2022.
Yes. The very end
Like
of 22.
yeah, the end of 2022, the team just changed. The whole vibe around the entire organization changed to where they became a much harder team to play because you have a guy with the game calling skills and just the defensive ability that Adley Rutschman has. As a catcher, I absolutely love Adley Rutschman. And I mean, Santander, and don't tell Jays fans that Ryan Mountcastle is league average. Anytime he plays the Jays, it's home run derby. You're basically facing Barry Bonds every time he steps into the box against any Jays pitcher. It doesn't even matter.
All right. So, any final comments here on the Orioles before we go ahead and move on?
One I'm just kind of looking at here. So they have Colton Cowser making the Fangraphs currently has the projected opening day roster, has Colton Cowser on it. That's a guy I'm really interested to see how he performs. He's such a highly touted prospect. He's their 6th ranked organization prospect of last year. And I didn't think he performed poorly last year. I just want to see more. Basically, even as a fan of a team that's in the same division, I don't even hate the Orioles because it's so cool watching this team develop and grow into established major leaguers. And even though they're going to be a pain in the butt to face for, like I said, not even this year, but for years to come, this team has the makings of a dynasty just from looking at the roster on paper with the core they have.
Yeah. So let's kind of switch gears a little bit to a team that has been maybe not a dynasty, but has been the cream of the crop of the AL East for a while, and that's the Tampa Bay Rays. So the Rays last year came in second to the Orioles with 99-63 record. So they were not bad in the slightest. They were still a dominant team. They just kind of got outpaced by the Orioles there the second half of the year. And this is a team that doesn't really have superstars. There's one that I could think of, and that's Randy Arozarena.
Yeah, some guy named Randy that plays really well in the outfield.
But outside of that, like, there's not a superstar on this team. You've got a ton of great players. You had Yandy Diaz, who started using his worm burner power last year to hit some more line drives. You've got Brandon Lowe. You've got Isaac Paredes, who started to break out last year. Then they just brought in Jose Caballero, who was the rookie first baseman over in Seattle.
Yeah,
but he's actually going to be playing short here for the Rays. So he was kind of a utility infielder, got put at first base for the Mariners, but he will be playing short. They brought in Richie Palacios from St. Louis, who in a short amount of time last year showed he's got some skills. So this is a team that has some really talented players, but nobody that jumps out at you as like, this guy is going to be a 30 home run, 280 guy with some that's just not the type of guys that they have.
I honestly never know how Tampa Bay does it, because you had a guy like Tyler Glasnow, who was maybe the only real superstar they had that wasn't Randy Arozarena, and they traded him. Like, that's just what the Rays do, is they build up this phenomenal team of really, really good players and then trade them off for prospects that you maybe haven't heard of before. And they just turn out to be phenomenal. And it boggles my mind as, like, just from a baseball standpoint of how good the Tampa Bay Rays are at finding talent, developing talent, and then really still operating on that old, like, Moneyball type mantra of, hey, if these guys get on base, I mean, you mentioned like Brandon Lau, but he's currently on the injured list for the strained oblique, is Josh Lowe. Kind of came out of nowhere last year and just performed really, really well. And I mean, that's the way Kevin, like, full credit to Kevin Cash and the Rays coaching staff, because they just do a phenomenal job getting the best out of all their players.
Yeah. Now, I guess going back to the superstars thing, they do actually have one more that we haven't mentioned yet, but that's kind of because he's going to miss the whole year, and that is Shane McClanahan. Sugar Shane, down with Tommy John, will not be pitching this year. but he is their true superstar. He's one of the best pitchers in the league when he's healthy. But this is a team that, like, their pitching staff is hurt right now.
Yeah.
Shane Baz, Taj Bradley, they're both on the IL. Baz actually had Tommy John. Taj Bradley strained pectoral as of like a week ago. Drew Rasmussen had an internal brace on his elbow. Jeffrey Springs had Tommy John. And so their rotation has been completely remade from last year. Eflin is still there, but they brought in Aaron Savali at the trade deadline, or before the trade deadline. They brought Zach Littell off of waivers from Boston last year. This offseason, they traded for Ryan Pepio from the Dodgers, where they also got, that was in the Glasnow trade. They also got Johnny DeLuca, an infielder, I believe, outfielder, who is also on the IL, I might point out. And Tyler Alexander, who they took off of waivers from Detroit. So this is a completely different rotation than the beginning of last year. But somehow Tampa is always able to go into the pitching lab and make these guys productive. It might only be for 4 innings and then they go to the bullpen, but they seem to not have a problem with it. Kevin Cash does a great job. So
he also, the opener too. Kevin Cash loves his openers.
Yeah.
But like looking at this team, like what was that magical run they went on last year to begin the season? Like I want to say it was like 20-0. It was unheard of.
It was like
streak.
It was like 15 or 12 or 15 wins before their first loss.
Yeah, and that first loss, by the way, against the Jays. I just want to point that out. But no, like this team, like I said, they just have this weird ability to take a guy like watch Tyler Alexander is going to get Cy Young votes this year. The way the Rays work, like it's just one of those weird teams that just it's what the Oakland A's would be if they actually tried. Like, don't spend a ton of money, but just develop players. Don't trade them all the time. Trade them when they're about to get paid arbitration and go get some unheard of prospect to make completely insane.
Yeah, I would agree with you if what they were doing wasn't so ridiculously difficult, because their scouting department is second to none. I mean,
their scouting department deserves a raise.
Teams go and poach their front office guys. Like Chaim Bloom was poached from them by the Red Sox. He came in, and we all know kind of how the Red Sox have been the last couple of years and their mindset. They were doing exactly what Chaim Bloom did in Tampa. That's what he was told to do in Boston. And then he was fired for Boston. But then they brought in another guy who was from Tampa. And so it's like they're just going, and Tampa can churn out these front office guys who are all the best scouts you've ever seen in your life. And then everyone tries to poach them and do it, and they can't. Nobody can replicate this.
The one outlier of like Tampa Bay executive that isn't doing exactly what he did in Tampa is Andrew Friedman with the Dodgers.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little bit different. Well, so he's kind of doing the same thing. Like, he's fantastic at drafting. They have a great farm system all the time. The difference is he's allowed to scout the best players and spend money on them. So it's a little bit different. It's like if you give the Rays unlimited money, I bet you they'd be a dynasty.
Oh, if you gave the Rays unlimited money plus the scouting department and player development staff, yeah, like they'd probably go 150-12.
Yeah. So, let's see here. Anything else? Are there any prospects we need to talk about? Actually, yes, there are. So Tampa does have a couple of prospects that will most likely be up this year. Junior Caminero, who is, I believe, a shortstop. So he'll potentially come up and either split time or take over from Jose Caballero at some point here this year. Curtis Mead is likely going to be up this year. Let's see who, and he's an infielder, I believe, second baseman, maybe.
I think he's third. I want to say he's
Third
third
base.
base.
Um, so
From what I saw in the spring, I'm pretty sure he played third.
okay, but yeah, so those are kind of their two big prospects that I'd kind of expect to see at some point here this year.
This
Um,
also has Austin Shenton projected to be up this year as well. And is I think Curtis Mead, honestly, I think he might be one of those like super utility guys, might be a second and third baseman, because I want to say Shenton is also a third baseman.
okay, and they have Isaac Paredes, and so Brandon Lau, I think, is maybe the guy that he'll play against righties, but I think they're probably going to sit him against lefties. And so that's kind of the spot where someone can actually maybe break in and start taking some time. So
Yeah.
if Mead plays second, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, and I mean Brandon Lau, don't get me wrong, he's a phenomenal hitter, but I mean the average isn't necessarily the highest, but he's he's gonna find light tower power, especially in a place like the Trop where home runs aren't necessarily the easiest to come by, but
So be thinking about where you're going to put these teams in your rankings. We won't do that until we've talked about all five, but just a reminder to keep that in mind. So next, let's go over to New York City, the Bronx, the Yankees. Last year were disappointing, 82-80, so still above 500, in fourth place in the division. The Yankees kept talking about how they were not okay with it. They're going to change everything this year. They're going all in, and they started out with a bang, trading for Juan Soto, probably the best hitter in the league right now, as far as pure hitter is concerned. The dude has an OBP over 400 like every single year. And he had kind of a down year last year. Still amazing, but not the Juan Soto that I think everyone expected. He hit 275, 410, 519. So lower slug than usual and lower average, but just as good at getting on base. With the Yankees putting him right in front of Aaron Judge. Oh my God, you're going to see that Soto shuffle a lot, and then you're going to see him coming around to score right in front of Aaron about 55 times, is my guess.
probably, honestly.
So,
I mean, it all depends too, because I mean, I know I saw something earlier this offseason where it was, Soto's better hitting in the 3 spot and Judge is better hitting in the 2 spot. It does not matter which order you put those two in. That ball is going to fly over the fence multiple times in the bottom half of the first inning at
well,
Yankee Stadium.
in giving Soto a hard hitting lefty, the short porch in Yankee Stadium,
Yeah.
that's gonna pay off. I mean, he didn't exactly have the best hitting park out there in Petco.
Yeah.
So,
You didn't have necessarily
or even
the
in
best.
a Nationals Park.
Well, you didn't really have it anywhere in the NL West. Like you play a full season in the NL West, and you're playing games at night in like San Francisco, LA. Like you're not having necessarily the best hitters park, like parks in general in that division. But I mean, still 275 average. You can't really look at Juan Soto, like his numbers last year with San Diego, and be like, oh no, he just wasn't the same Juan Soto. It was just the division he was playing in, and just the ball not necessarily carrying as well, unless you're playing in Colorado, that is.
Yeah. Some other guys that are on the roster now. The Yankees traded for Alex Verdugo to take over left field in a rare trade with Boston. They also brought in Trent Grisham to potentially play some outfield. They brought in Marcus Stroman to add into their rotation on I want to say that was a 2-year deal.
2 year. I want to say that was a 2 year as well.
2-year, $37 million with a vesting option for 2026. So they're going to get some reliable innings out of Stroman. So, but they're going to need him because for the first month to maybe 3 months, they're going to be without their ace, Garrett Cole, who has started every start since he's been in New York.
And that's going to be the thing that I think is really going to tell the Yankees how their season's going to go, is how those first month to 3 months without Garrett Cole go. Because you're starting Nestor Cortez opening day. You're getting Carlos Rodon, who no one really knows what you're going to get from him. He's either going to be phenomenal, or you're getting a repeat of last year where the ball just wasn't staying in the park for him, and a season that was kind of riddled by injuries as well. So you're going to need a guy like Marcus Stroman. Even if here's your 3 right now, he probably turns into your 4 when Garrett Cole comes back, I would imagine, because right now they have Clark Schmidt at 4, and then
Clayton Beater, who was a really high-rated prospect for the Dodgers a couple years ago. He came over in, I can't even think of what trade that was. It's trade deadline deal in 22.
I can't even remember.
Probably a reliever or something. I don't remember. But yeah, so Clayton Beater, he'll be in there for a while. This is a rotation that is kind of, the Yankees had a lot of depth in their rotation, so they used it to deal, and that's how they got Juan Soto, sending Michael King and Johnny Brito over to
and Kyle Higashioka as well.
Yeah, and Kyle Higashioka, but we'll come to that one in a minute. But so they had a lot of depth in their rotation, and it kind of got bled dry a little bit with the trade for Juan Soto and the fact that you lose Garrett Cole. Like, they just don't really have all that much depth anymore.
I think they also sent pitchers in the Alex Verdugo trade as well.
That sounds right.
Because they had a good amount of organizational depth at starting pitcher, and it's gone. They had.
They didn't sign back Herman. Frankie Montas went to the Reds. Luis Severino went to the Mets. So they had quite a few guys leave. And so they're in a little bit of a rough spot here to start the year. That being said, I do really like this team. They have a fairly good bullpen with Clay Holmes, Jonathan Loaizaga. Those guys are going to anchor it down. You've got another couple guys in there, Caleb Ferguson, who could really, really be good. Victor Gonzalez, who it came over in one of the deals to clear a roster spot for the Dodgers. So he is probably going to be playing a big part there. I think the key is going to be in the lineup, though. Austin Wells is finally up. Like, he was up for a short amount of time last year at the end of the year, along with Jason Dominguez, and he is a phenomenal hitter. So he will be splitting time with Jose Trevino, probably DHing some as well if Stanton or Judge go down. He needs some work defensively, and Trevino could definitely help coach him up a bit, I think.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say that too. You know, you get in a guy like Jose Trevino, who is a phenomenal defensive catcher. And a lot of the times you have that saying of you finish your development in the majors. And I feel like for Austin Wells, that's the final piece that he's really missing is, you know, the defensive responsibilities that come with being a major league catcher. Not that he's been bad, but in a way it was like, I was watching a few games and it was like, you're not great at blocking, but it will come. Like, once you have him under Trevino for a full year. I haven't seen how he looked in spring training yet defensively, but honestly, I don't have really any doubt with him being the backup guy. My main concern with New York right now is how good the team performs is going to be how well they can out hit their problems. Because you have a lineup that has Stanton, who has looked much better this spring than in years past. Judge is going to be Aaron Judge. Like, that's not going to be an issue. Juan Soto is not going to be an issue, but you're going to have the guys like Anthony Rizzo, DJ LeMahieu. Like, how those guys perform is going to be very, very related to how they perform in the regular season this year.
Rizzo has looked a lot better here now that he's had some time between the whole concussion nonsense. So I don't really have too many doubts around Anthony Rizzo. DJ is kind of the one who scares me. Third base for the Yankees, they really don't have anybody to take it over. Maybe Oswaldo Cabrera, Oswald Peraza when he comes back from injury, maybe.
I mean, Oswaldo Cabrera this spring as well has looked horrendous.
Has he?
So, yeah, like, I want to see if I can pull it up right now. There was a point where he was hitting, like, sub 100.
But the Yankees, if they do see some injuries in their outfield or at the DH spot, they do have Spencer Jones waiting in the wings, a phenomenal prospect in the outfield.
Left-handed Aaron Judge over here.
Pretty much. So,
okay. So I just looked it up. Oswaldo Cabrera has actually turned it around a little bit this spring. He's raised his average up to 213. So
solid.
He's hit the ball a little bit better. His OPS is still 664, on base percentage at 302. So he's okay, but I mean, if I'm using him as a bench bat, that's probably as far as I'm willing to go with Oswaldo Cabrera. But a guy like DJ LeMahieu, yeah, that's, as your leadoff guy, that scares me a little bit. But when you look at the guys behind him, he's going to get pitches to hit because they're not going to want to have a guy on base for 2-3.
Yeah. All right. So we've talked about some teams that we have some hopes for their performance being either up to par or better than last year, I think. Let's go ahead and switch gears to the seller of the division, which last year was the Boston Red Sox, who finished the season 78-84. This is a team that this offseason, Rafi Devers voiced his frustration and said, you know what we need to do. They fired Chaim Bloom, who we talked about earlier.
They needed to do.
It wasn't what they needed to do. They brought in Chaim Bloom 2.0. They said, we're not going to spend money. We just want you to make the team good for cheap. Exact same thing they've been doing for years. And so what did this team do in trades and free agency? Well, they added 4 players to their roster in total. Well, I guess there's a couple that are hurt that we'll talk about in a minute. But as of the opening day roster, they brought in 4 guys. They brought in Tyler O'Neill from the Cardinals, who I actually think that was a really good move, to be fair. He's going to make use of the Green Monster and add some power into this lineup that wasn't there as long as he could stay healthy. But then their other 3 moves are bringing in some relievers. Isaiah Campbell from Seattle, Justin Slayton from the Mets, and Chase Anderson, who is a non-roster invitee, free agent out of Pittsburgh. They did try to make some moves to significantly improve this team. They signed Lucas Giolito to a 3-year deal? 2-year deal?
I think it was 2. I want to say it was 2, and it's already going to be burnt 1 because he's out for the entire year.
Yeah, so he is getting an internal brace surgery on his elbow. They brought in Liam Hendricks, who is now getting Tommy John surgery. They traded for Vaughn Grissom from the Braves, and he will be back soon, but he is starting the season on the IL with a strained groin. Yeah, so
I don't want to know what a groin
a strained grain.
Yeah, a groin strained is.
Strained grain. But yeah, so this is a team that they are really, really struggling to make any sort of improvements here because every time they do, the guy gets injured. So they're going to be rocking out Masataka Yoshida, who was second in the Rookie of the Year last year. Really, really good. Jaron Duran, Rafi Devers, Tyler O'Neill, rookie Sedan Rafaela, who I think people have some pretty high hopes for. But outside of that, like, what are we going to get out of 31-year-old Trevor Story? Is his arm strong enough now to make those throws from short to first? And Manuel Valdez, he's not really all that great. Like, he's a replacement level guy, to be completely honest. Connor Wong at catcher, he's fairly decent. So, like, I'm not too upset there. But I don't know. This is not a team that inspires a lot of confidence.
It's really not. I mean, even like Tristan Casas, maybe like a guy that, hey, you know what? If you're a Red Sox fan and you're looking for some glimmer of hope, Tristan Casas may be that.
He's gonna have power.
He's gonna have power. I mean, you know what you're getting out of Rafael Devers.
Yeah, absolute superstar. Like, he's clearly the best player on this team by far.
Well, and with his comments earlier this spring too, it looks like he's kind of taken a bit of a leadership role as well with the team now. You know, when you're calling out management and being like, we just want to make this team better, and you just kind of doing nothing with it. I mean, that's what you're kind of looking for your cornerstone guy to do. It's like, hey, we want to win, and you're giving us nothing to work with here. I mean, Brian Bayo as their ace of the rotation, I have no issues with that at all. Then you look at actually their top three isn't horrible. Nick Pivetta, you don't really know what you're getting from him, but he is a serviceable starter when he's on his game. But then
he's not a number two.
He's not a number two by any mean. I mean, I was getting to their 4-5, which is Garrett Whitlock and Tanner Houck, who were better bullpen arms than I think they'd ever be starters. But you just kind of have this team that, you know, it's like the land of misfit toys. It's the best way I'm going to explain it. You have Rafael Devers and the land of misfit toys.
Yeah, so kind of after Bayo and Pivetta, it's kind of a toss-up as to like who actually will be in this rotation long term. Cutter Crawford seems like he's probably going to be there for or at least he's going to get the first shot to stay the longest. But they have Brian Mata and Chris Murphy on the IL. Those guys will get some chances here in the rotation. So between Tanner Houck, Garrett Whitlock, Brian Mata, and Chris Murphy, like, which two out of those four are going to actually get the starts? I do think Tanner Houck has the potential to be the right-handed Chris Sale. I always have. I think he still has that potential, but at 27 years old, going through the injuries he's gone through, it's not looking great for that.
No, and like I said, I really liked him as a reliever, honestly. Like, if you told me he was going to be like their closer or setup guy, I wouldn't hate that at all. Because he does have that very Chris Sale-esque wind-up to him. The arm slot and everything is very similar. So I looked at that and I'm like, hey, you know, if you made him a setup guy, I think he'd have really, really good success there. But, I mean, you want to throw him in the rotation for now, see how he does, okay. But, yeah, like, Brian Mata, I'd like to see more from him, see how he does. But looking at the rotation, I mean, if they were banking so hard this year that Lucas Giolito was going to stay healthy. And you could almost tell because you have, like, if you told me Nick Pivetta was your 3, I wouldn't hate that. But, I mean, even then, you're having Lucas Giolito as your 2. So.
Yeah, they were definitely banking on him having a bounce back year. I mean, the fact that they traded Chris Sale for Vaughn Grissom, like, that kind of said right there, it's like, okay, whoever we bring in, he's got to be our ace. and he immediately goes down, which was a major bummer. I like Lucas. He's had a really up and down career, similar to Jack Flaherty, who was his high school teammate. Um, like, it's really, really unfortunate. I really think that the Red Sox should have gone out and still can, mind you, sign Jordan Montgomery, sign somebody. There's a lot of guys still available right now, and opening day is in 3 days. So
it's not far off at all.
yeah.
It's just a matter of trying to figure out like what this team really wants to do. Because if it was me and I was in this situation right now, like I you could recommend, hey, sell off some guys, like trade them off for prospects to help develop, but you really don't have much left because you traded Verdugo for, I mean, some pitching depth, sure, but
so it really does feel like they are setting up for these prospects that they have, because they have some phenomenal prospects right now. Marcelo Meyer, shortstop, he
Von
is
Grissom,
probably close. Von Grissom, I'm not as thrilled about. I don't know that he's going to be a long-term option, and if he is, it's probably going to be at second base, because Marcelo Meyer can actually play defensively where Von Grissom cannot. Marcelo Meyer, Ceddanne Rafaela, who's already up on the roster, Nick York, and then they do have Miguel Bleis, but he's down at single A still. So they've got some really, really high level prospects that are pretty universally loved prospects in the scouting industry. So, and these guys are all like within a year, most likely, of being on this roster. So it kind of feels like they're just like, this division's so good. We've got these mega prospects that we want to try out. We're just going to kind of field a team for now.
It's a Band-Aid. It's a Band-Aid on a scab right now is what it is. It's, hey, we know that it's coming, but it's healing, but we need to stop the infection before it gets too bad.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Boston is the team that most disappointed me in just the moves they made this offseason. It just felt like they weren't trying. So I'm with Rafi Devers.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I realize I'm wearing a Red Sox hat during this episode. It's maybe not the most logical choice, seeing as I could have worn a Yankees hat.
Honestly, I don't think I could have done this if you were wearing a Yankees hat, to be fair.
That's fair. So I would have gone solo pod. All right. So we are probably needing to move along here to our final team. And I'm probably just going to sit back and let you go. Toronto Blue Jays.
I have thoughts. Many, many thoughts. So this Toronto Blue Jays are a team that was almost had one of the most coveted free agents of all time. He was on the plane, except he wasn't. We had Robert Herjavec. Robert Herjavec, everyone, biggest free agent acquisition of the Blue Jays.
What position does he play?
Future owner, hopefully.
Fair enough.
He has the money. But no, we went from Shohei Ohtani to IKF.
I would argue you went from Shohei Ohtani to Justin Turner.
Well, okay, it went Justin Turner like 3 months after Shohei Ohtani. The first major move we had after Shohei Ohtani was IKF. Yeah. So it was like, you know, we got a shopping spree to the most luxurious, fancy store in the entire world. We had the opportunity to shop there. We got there, the line was too long. We got kicked out right at the entrance so that there was no more people allowed to go in.
So you went to Five Below.
We went to a Canadian store called Giant Tiger, where you get some discount stuff. It's not the greatest place in the world. Don't get me wrong, Giant Tiger, if you need like Planters peanut butter, it's the best place to go. But besides that, you're not getting much that's worth more than $10. But it just kind of seemed like a team that obviously you're banking on your core of Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Bo Bichette, Dalton Varsho, who has looked phenomenal this spring training. He's looked so much better, so much more comfortable. A guy like George Springer, you're really needing a turnaround of as well. And I think the biggest change this offseason was giving the reins of the offensive strategy and all that to Don Mattingly. He's made a individualized team approach. That's kind of how they're wording it, where each player gets to work on their strengths and what they're actually good at, while also benefiting the team approach overall, which is something we didn't really have in recent years under Dave Hudgens, who was the Astros hitting coach in 2017, has since gone to some island in Florida. Is basically the Jays are like, hey, he's still on the staff, but he's working with minor league hitting coaches, and he's gone. That's kind of where we sent him, was to some island in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. But
is it Key West?
I think it's probably not. To be fair, it's probably some deserted island off of Key West. But like I'm looking at this roster and it's like it's not bad. It's not bad at all. You have like Springer's one of the best leadoff hitters, arguably of all time, just in terms of home runs. Like he's
second most leadoff home runs of all time after Ricky Henderson, right?
Yeah, I think he just passed Alfonso Soriano last year. Bo Bichette. Honestly, I could do an entire podcast myself about Bo Bichette. But Vladdy has looked phenomenal. I think just yesterday, at the time of recording this, so it'd be 2 days ago, as of the time we're posting this. The top three in the order of George Springer, Bo Bichette, and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. went 6 for 7. Like, those are the guys you're banking on, as well as a guy like Kevin Kiermaier to kind of repeat what he had last year with the most hits out of the 9 spot in the majors. He looks like he's more a 7-hole guy this year, where we're going with Kevin Biggio at the 9 spot. But honestly, I don't hate this team at all. Rotation, right now we have Kevin Gausman slated as our 5 guy just because we're waiting to see on how his shoulder is holding up. But a lot of the issues that we're going to see with the Jays this year are injuries. Guys like Danny Jansen, he's already hurt. He already fractured something in his wrist this year. But it's going to be how the depth holds up, because we don't have a ton of pitching depth in the minors. Really, we got Ricky Tiedemann, who is still in Major League camp, by the way. It's not even ruled out that he's not making the opening day roster. He very well could.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if to start the season we had a rotation of Barrios, Bassett, Kikuchi, Gausman, and Tiedemann. Bowden Francis is currently the projected starter, fourth starter there. And then Alek Manoah being on the IL with shoulder soreness. Granted, last year Manoah didn't really... Baseball and Manoah didn't get along last year. I think that's Baseball the nice Manoah way to say
Baseball and Manoah also haven't gone along well this year either. He made like 2 spring training starts, threw a bullpen after that, and they were just like, hey, he didn't recover as well as we would have liked him to. And we really haven't seen him since. So, and it seems like the shoulder issue was a problem last year, which was leading to some of the issues, but he wasn't really communicating that with the team that well. So that's going to be something that I'm interested to kind of see as well, because you have guys like, I mean, right now they're saying Mitch White's going to be in our bullpen, and I'm scared. But like, I don't hate this team overall. I don't think they made enough changes externally to move the needle a ton from last year. Really, they're banking on a lot of internal improvements, which I've seen. Just looking at this team through spring training, I've seen the improvements are there. It's just a matter of how that translates, because you're talking spring training, to actual games that count and how
So
that works.
where I kind of see this team maybe having its biggest struggles is going to be in some of the infield spots. They're at third base. They've been trying to find an answer for a while. It was Kevin Biggio until it wasn't.
It
Second
was
base
Kevin
was
Biggio until it was IKF.
well until it was like Donaldson and like a whole bunch of different options over the last couple of years. Matt Chapman last year, but they let him go. So now you got IKF. You have Cavan, who might be playing second base a lot of the time. They just traded Santiago Espinal over to the Reds. So we'll probably be seeing Davis Schneider quite a bit more now that Espy's gone. But like second and third scare me. They really do.
Second, I'm not actually concerned about. To be completely honest with you, I don't have an issue with Davis Schneider. I think he's going to be phenomenal. He's been playing a bit of left field as well, so he's kind of taking that Whit Merrifield role. As well as a guy that's really stood out this year is Ernie Clement in spring training. He has really cut down his swing and miss substantially, I might add as well, to the point where they were showing a graphic on the broadcast on Saturday that he swung and missed at a pitch 2 times all year, all spring training. He has 3 spring training home runs.
Dang.
He's currently hitting .356 this spring with an OPS at 1.027. So Ernie Clement was the reason the Jays traded Santiago Espinal. Clement doesn't have options. Espinal doesn't have options. And Ernie Clement flat out hit his way onto this team.
All right. Well, cool. So we are kind of running out of time here. So let's go ahead and get our predictions for the division. Give me your standings of these 5 teams at the end of 2024.
So I'm going to go in bottom to top because I'm pretty sure we both have unanimous bottom.
Yeah, the Jays.
No, the Boston Red Sox.
Oh.
The team you forgot was still there. So I don't see Boston really making a ton of moves anywhere in the division, really. Like we said, it's kind of a Band-Aid team, not necessarily a team that you're looking at saying this is going to be a playoff team. Fourth, I kind of have Tampa, to be honest, with the way their pitching staff is just kind of depleted. They're not a bad team. I mean, heck, fourth in the AL East with how strong this division is still pretty good. Third, I just have the Jays there. I don't really see that any of the improvements they made this year move them much past where they were. I still like them. I still like the team that they're going to put out there with the core they have. Like Vladdy, I think is going to have a bounce back year from more towards 2021 than what we saw in the last 2 seasons. Second, I have the Yankees. I still think they're good. I don't know if their pitching is going to hold up to take a run at the division seriously. I kind of have them and the Jays about 1 or 2 games apart. And then in first, I have the Baltimore Orioles. I absolutely love this team. I think once Jackson Holiday comes up, it's probably one of the best teams, probably top 7 rosters in all of baseball, just in terms of how good and young that team is.
So my order is actually a bit different than yours, and I would like to point out that the top 4 teams here are all pretty close together. Like, it's kind of a crapshoot where those 4 are going to land for me. You're right. Boston is my number 5. Straight up.
Yeah. Like,
I do think the two teams that went out and made substantial improvements to their roster are going to be the top two in this division this year. Yes, Garrett Cole's going to be out for a couple of months, but I do see the Yankees being able to out-hit their way to staying in it until he comes back. And once Garrett Cole's back, I have no doubt in my mind he's going to dominate. That being said, Corbin Burns is healthy right now. That young team is really good. I'm taking Baltimore 1, the Yankees 2, and then don't get mad at me because these two are an absolute crapshoot.
Oh yeah, the Jays and Rays, yeah.
I cannot. I've already gone and bet against the Rays to get third. I can't bet against the Rays going any lower than that.
That is fair. That is fair.
So the Rays are 3 in my book, and just I'm not seeing any actual improvement. I honestly, I'm seeing a loss of talent on this Blue Jays roster, just losing Matt Chapman and not signing him back. Like, there weren't any substantial additions. He was the only substantial subtraction, but I do think it offsets. So I think ultimately this is unless there's natural growth of the team or these players that are kind of taking over, I do think this is maybe a slightly worse Blue Jays team than last year, just on paper.
The only reason that I've given the Jays a bit more benefit of the doubt is just how bad offensively Matt Chapman was from like May till October.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like, I think he was the worst qualified hitter, I think, in all of baseball from May till October. Like,
what's IKF gonna get you?
Slightly better.
Slightly, but worse defense.
Worse defense, but I mean,
so it's like 6 in one, half dozen in the other.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like, I like this Blue Jays team. Don't get me wrong. I like 4 out of the 5 teams in this division. So
and then there's Boston.
So of course I rep the crappy well, I'm also repping the White Sox right now, and they're also going to be the seller of their division. So it is what it is.
It must be laundry day because you're just wearing a ton of socks.
Correct. Yeah. All right. So that is all we have for you guys for today for our American League East division preview. This completes 6 of 6 divisions before opening day. Check out Thursday. We will be doing a season preview of the entire league instead of doing This Week in Baseball. That will be delayed until next Monday. So make sure to come back, check that out. Let us know on Twitter or in the comments on YouTube what you think we got right and wrong here in this preview. Who's going to win the division? Where the Blue Jays are going to finish.
We will revisit this, by the way. We will come back in the offseason.
Yes, we will. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful day, and we will see you back here on Thursday for opening day. If you enjoy the podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcasting app or YouTube to make sure you don't miss any future episodes. Join the conversation on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Getaway Day Pod. If you enjoy card collecting, check out our sister YouTube channel at Getaway Day Cards.